It is the North London derby this Sunday as Spurs take on Arsenal, an absolute classic of a game. And today we are going through it all. Previews, analysis, and who we think is going to win this major tie. Let's kick things straight off with our resident Arsenal fan. Reese, to put it bluntly, is this game season defining for both sides, even at this early stage?
No.
All right, podcast over. We're done. No, talk me through it.
No, look, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. I think if you're playing, I think when you play these sorts of games or any game in the latter stage of the season, there's much more riding on it. You want to lose your games early to build your momentum now. City lost their game, or was it November, to Villa? Didn't lose for the rest of the season there. Whereas Arsenal lost the crucial game to Villa in April. That's what cost them the league. So, no, it doesn't matter. However, I will contradict myself and say that both teams are actually now under a bit of pressure to get a result in this game. But I'm sure I can explain more as to why in a minute.
Yeah. Jamie, do you disagree? Do you think it is still season defining, even though it's so early?
I think the word season defining is sort of exaggerating it, I guess. But this is a massive game for both teams due to the fact that the last games for both of them weren't the result they wanted. The fact that Arsenal are now already 2 points behind City and Liverpool, again, for the 1-1 draw against Brighton, and Spurs lost against Newcastle, drew against Leicester. They're points where actually, if you went off the game for Spurs, they were looking to sort of, they probably could have won both of them games. So they could have been on 9 points, and so could have Arsenal. So the fact that they've dropped points means that the next game that they play, they need to turn it around. And I think for Arsenal, if they drop points against Spurs, they then have City away next. And that's what you can't be 5 points behind City 4 games in and then got to play them away. I know, I do agree with Reese, it is how you finish. Because I've seen it time and time again with City. It's the sort of 10, 11 games in a row where you win at the end of the season that gets you over the line to win the title. But you don't want to be starting behind massively, especially for Arsenal's case when you compare it to City, who are, Pep said, we're going to start slow. And if we're starting slow and then 7 points ahead, Arsenal will be worried. And then Spurs, I think you've got to look towards the top 4 race. If City are already doing really well, Liverpool have looked very good so far, especially after their 3-0 win against United. And then you've got the others who are going to be involved in that top 4 race. You don't want to be losing points this early. It's not season defining, but it could mean you're playing catch up for a lot of the season. And that's what I don't think these teams want to be doing as big a point as what it could be.
Yeah, I agree with you both, to be honest. Like, it's not season defining, that's not the right word, but actually it's so crucial to not just this game week, but actually the next 2 or 3. Because you're right, if that gap becomes 5 and somehow becomes 8, how are Arsenal mentally going to deal with that? Because we've seen if they're ahead, perhaps there is struggles with the mentality. Being 8 points behind, well, you might argue it's pressure off, but actually there will be real questions if we get into game week 4, 5, 6, and there's a gap that almost is double digits. So I think this is a bigger game for Arsenal, personally.
But you have seen us 8 points ahead, and we chucked it. So,
but it would be City ahead, and that's why I'm saying it's a different game.
Of course, yeah. But like I said, I sometimes prefer being the chaser. Because you don't have. When I say you don't have that pressure, you're not got someone breathing down your neck. So it's not the end of the world. I've always maintained we're not going to win it, but yeah, it's the pressure that this club or these players don't seem to enjoy, and they're already under it following the result against Brighton.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And look, we've got to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is Declan Rice. Obviously, Arsenal dropping points against Brighton, as we know. A real moment in the match. Now, let's very, very briefly talk about the decision. I know we're a bit outdated to some degree, and people have had their say, but do we think this is the right decision, and how crucial is Rice out to this fixture?
The red card, you might call me biased, but it's the correct decision. The refs made the right decision. Look, he didn't want to do that because the fact that it is like a little tap away of the ball, you saw the ref sort of going, I'm sorry, but I've got to give you this second yellow. And the problem I have is the people criticising it. Arsenal fans are going to criticise it because you got the bias to your own club. It would happen with City fans, Chelsea fans, United, Liverpool, whoever you are. You'll be like, that's really harsh. Why is he getting a second yellow for that kind of thing? But it's the rules, and all the professional players know what Rice is doing. Rice meant to do that for it. He saw Veltman taking a quick free kick. He did not know that Veltman was going to kick it into nothing, or actually probably not even take it. But he still did it because he wanted to protect the 1-0 lead. And to me, it's just a second. It's a yellow. I don't care. And the funny thing is, I think what says it all about the decision is Arteta, Arsenal Fan TV, other Arsenal fans. None of them actually complained about the decision. They all said, we want consistency out of the refs. So that just proves the point that they know the decision is actually right, but they've just tried to spin it in a way to make it negative that you shouldn't have been sent off. They know by the rules that is a second yellow, and he got sent off correctly.
Yeah, I think Arteta came out straight after trying to defend it and was like, oh, he didn't mean to do it, or make some excuse. I can't remember the exact wording, but
he knew exactly what he was doing. You can ask every one of them professional footballers who are pundits, did Rice actually mean to kick that ball? And you put him into a lie detector, it's 100% he meant to do it.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, he did. He's looking down at the ball, and I think the thing is, I almost don't blame Rice. Now, obviously, most Arsenal fans are not going to criticise Rice, i.e., most Arsenal fans are too infuriating to say, oh, it shouldn't have been a red, blah, 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 to kind of deflect. I almost don't think it was naive from Rice. And I kind of contradict myself on that. What I mean by this is, honestly, 9 times out of 10, I don't think refs bottle that. I honestly believe that. I've seen it so many times. We've seen it with.
You shouldn't put the ref in that position.
No, he shouldn't.
You can't. Like, I disagree saying you can't blame Rice. He's the only person you can blame. He's put the referee in that position. Like the first yellow he got, it's a clear yellow. He was late. No one can complain about that one. So you know you're on the yellow. So why do it? Why give the chance? Because if Rice didn't get sent off, Arsenal win that game, and I think comfortably. The game flipped after the red card. So he's the only person you can blame. So I feel like you're defending him for something that he's done stupidly.
Yeah, my point is more that 9 times out of 10 players will do that and get away with it. So logic, again, in a split second, he's probably not thinking it. So maybe it is just naive on him. Or maybe he doesn't even clock he's on a yellow card potentially. Mate, I don't know. But ultimately, refs bottle that all the time. So I guess I kind of get the Arsenal defence that they want consistency, but ultimately it's the right decision. It's just harsh the way it played out. Well, unfortunate the way it played out.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, this whole we want consistency thing is impossible. Referees are human beings, folks. We all make inconsistencies in everything we do. It just happens. It's impossible to be consistent. And like you say, 9 times out of 10, he doesn't get penalised for that. But you do, and he did. And he is a seasoned professional. He should know better. He knew what he was doing. He'd already got a stupid yellow card as it was. And he's gone and done that, and he's been caught out, and he doesn't like that he's been caught. Yes, he's accepted responsibility, and I give him credit for that. And Arteta has to defend his players. I do understand that. But it's the whinging, it's the whining, it's the constant, everyone's against us. What about João Pedro when he did this? At the end of the day, it's very hard to compare all that. Focus on what you're doing on the pitch. Don't give a monkeys about the Brighton incident. You've still got 90 minutes to put the ball in the back of the net. And they did that stupid thing like that, I understand that Mark Halsey came out, didn't he, and said that the decision was wrong, and that's fine. It's easy to analyse it after a game when it's all in the past. You can't just rewind it now. But I believe the PGMO had agreed to stamp out on this sort of participant behaviour, such as delaying things, because it is look, I don't mind time wasting and all of that, but I do believe that it's fair that referees penalise it. And they've been caught out. And Rice has done a stupid thing because he has now left this team so open ahead of the Spurs game, because this team lost their composure against Brighton. Yes, they did well when it went 1-1 to hold on to a 1-1 and almost went and nicked it. Spurs will be better than that because they've got more of a drive behind them in this game. So we've lost our best player in a way for a very big away game, which could set us back. Look, it's not the end of the world if we lose, but the fact that Man City is after that, you can't really afford to lose that too much. It's just a stupid thing to do, and he has himself to blame, and he should be blamed.
Well, look, you've brought it up, so we can. It's a nice segue into our next section, but let's talk key battles for this game in terms of sort of tactical analysis. We'll start with the obvious one. You know, Thomas Partey against Brighton was absolutely awful. And I said to you guys, he's dropped to 0 out of 10 in the first half, and it didn't get much better in the second half. He is now going to be in the midfield against potentially, Bissouma is probably the most obvious matchup. Is this a concern, and how is it a concern now? Because Rice is a better player than Partey. Partey had a few peaks and early on, but doesn't look ready. Giving the ball away too easily, sloppy fouls. And if that continues, I think you guys could be in trouble here. Do you agree with that?
Yes and no. Like, Partey does drop a 0 out of 10, then drops a 10 out of 10. He's capable. Maybe without Rice in the team, he can just be himself. You know, maybe he doesn't feel like he needs that pressure, or he can, you know, he thrives in that sort of thing. I don't know. He's capable of delivering, and I think we might have to change tactically to maybe try and protect his weaknesses. But I do agree this leaves us in a spot of bother. You know, I think regardless of Spurs' result against Newcastle, I think they're going to be more than confident for this game.
I think you've got to look at it sort of like Partey will now be paired up with Jorginho, because obviously the new signing Merino is injured. So it's one of them where will Partey with Jorginho actually benefit him or not? Because if Partey plays like he did against Brighton, I thought 0 out of 10 might have been a bit harsh, but it wasn't much better than that. If he plays like that against Spurs will tear him apart. But yes, I kind of agree with what Reece says. It might actually give him a bit more freedom to play the way he wants to, and it could suit him more that Rice isn't there. That's probably more of an Arteta problem down the line, whether does Partey and Rice work. But for against Spurs, Bissouma and Son have done quite well, but they also can drop 0 out of 10s. So really, it's such a weird battle where, like you saw last season, it was that I don't think Spurs had a midfield in that game, and Arsenal 3-0 up at half time. So it is one of them where it generally could be who's on it on the day, and it's kind of like just put a coin flip out there. You don't know which one's going to give you a 10 out of 10 or a 0 out of 10. Really, I think they're both could be a bit shaky.
Yeah, and then the other big one, I guess, is the new star signing. We'll soon find out if it's a star signing or not. Solanke, obviously assuming he's back from injury and everything's fine, it looks as though that will be the case. Him versus Saliba / Gabriel, however you want to look at it. Now, obviously the injury's there in the middle, but the Leicester game, I think he looked, I appreciate they didn't get the result, but in the first half particularly, Solanke looked sharp. And I was looking at going, obviously he was in my FPL team at the time, going, great decision. Obviously has not quite worked out in that way, but he looks sharp in my opinion. So the question is, post-injury, can he contribute to the Spurs side, or is it, the worst time to play, Saliba?
No, I think he'll target Gabriel more than he will Solanke if he's fit. There's no confirmed return date on him yet, but as we saw with Gabriel, he didn't like playing against Watkins, right? And I think Solanke is probably going to cause him a probably similar sort of trouble. So he's going to thrive off that. And I think if he is going to be fit, he's going to be up for it because he's going to want to prove a point in his first sort of North London derby, isn't he? So
Yeah, I do agree, Jordan, with the whole when he played against Leicester, he looked like he could have got, 1 or 2 goals quite comfortably in that first half alone. And Arsenal did give away some big chances to Watkins in that game. And I think Watkins wasn't fully fit at that point. So if Solanke is, I think he will get a chance. But against Leicester, he didn't put him away. So I think he's also got to break that duck of getting his first Premier League goal for Spurs, really, for him. So that could be the sort of, one of them where it's not quite gone his way just yet. But against Saliba and Gabriel, they can shut you out as well. I've done it to Haaland last season, completely shut him out. Depends on how I think Arteta sets up. If he goes with a bit more of a defensive approach, there's even less space for Solanke to get in. But Solanke's very good at closing down. So it can, I think he will get chances, but I don't expect him to get as good a chances as Watkins got because they were brilliant chances and it's just putting them away. And if this injury has halted him back a little bit, he may not look as sharp as against Leicester. And that, if he's not fully fit, I think he won't get a sniff against them too.
Yeah, and then what about the wide men? Obviously, we've got Udogie's now back in the Spurs side. Saka versus Udogie, and then Son versus White will probably be the other matchup. Who do we think is going to get the edge? Because look, Udogie obviously had injuries concerns, but the start of last season he was brilliant. And then obviously Saka, as we know, it can be hit and miss. Reasonable start to the season. How do we see? Well, who do we see winning those battles? I guess is probably the better question.
I suppose it's who has the better game at the end of the day, isn't it? I think this is very much a game of if Son's on it, he'll do very well. If White's on it, he'll do very well. Maybe they'll cancel each other out. We don't know. But this is where both managers are going to have to be very tactical on how they're going to overcome this, because I think we don't know what we're going to get from either side at this moment in time.
I think if you go with them sort of 2 matchups, Saka versus Udogie and Son versus White, I'd be backing Saka more than Son, because Udogie is brilliant going forward. His strength isn't actually the defensive side of the game. And to be honest, I can see both Saka and Son scoring. They did it last season. I think they did it in both games last season. So them two both get up for it and can find the back of the net in this North London derby. But Udogie, I think, has to go right. I can't go as forward as I like to normally because Saka is a massive threat. And White doesn't need to get forward. White knows he can go, you know what, I'm just going to sit back in it. I need to sit back in this game, not let Son get ahead. Because if White goes forward and Son's left with space, White ain't catching up Son. Son's absolutely rapid, and probably only Walker in the league can catch him up. Or maybe Van der Ven, but obviously he's on the same side, so it doesn't matter for that. But so I think defensively, White looks better at marking out Son than Udogie does against Saka, really. So I would give the edge to Arsenal in that, in the sort of wide main men.
Yeah, I think similar to be honest on that one. I just think Udogie, as good as he is going forward, I can see a scenario where he gets an early booking and then he's kind of handicapped. And we've seen Saka even at the weekend. The amount of fouls Saka draws is just incredible. And I can, again, depends on the ref, because I know sometimes the refs like to think they're clever and try and avoid booking in these games, but I can see a scenario where Udogie's kind of early in the book, first 20 minutes, and then he's really, really up against it. And so I'd probably just go Saka as well. Last but not least, score predictions. We've obviously had our say in terms of tactical analysis. Where do we think this is going to end up? I'll kick things off. I do still think Arsenal have got the quality to get the result. Again, the game last season is kind of pushing me in that light as well. But I think, again, because of no Rice, it's not going to be as easy as last season. So I'm going to go 2-1 Arsenal.
Okay, I've gone a bit different. I think this will be one where both teams don't want to lose. I think losing to both of them will be worse. So they won't go gun-ho if it is sort of even after, say, 70 minutes. So I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. But if I had to pick someone to win, I would edge it towards Arsenal over Spurs, though.
Oh, this is actually a real tough one. I would rip your hand off for a draw. I really, really would. I was confident we'd get off to a decent start at the start of the season because we had no choice. But Rice not being there is really, really done us in, I think. Of course, we've got Sterling that could play. Saka might want to turn up. God, I don't know.
You don't want Sterling at the Spurs ground. I've watched him miss about 5 XG from just a City point of view, and that was over 2 games.
I think
So I don't know about that one.
Don't want him at any ground, I'd say.
I think with Rice missing and the fact that Solanke could play, Van der Ven could be back, I think that tips it in Spurs' favour a bit. We've won our last 2 games at Spurs, which is going to fire them up. They can't afford 3 consecutive losses at home to Arsenal. I don't think that's ever happened. Correct me if I'm wrong, statisticians, whatever. But I will say 2-1 Spurs because I think Rice is really going to knacker us. And I think we could be in for a bit of a horror show. But it's okay. Like, I'd rather lose this now than I would in April. Put it that way. So I'm okay with it. It's just, yeah, Rice has killed us for that. But I'm not going to blame him if we lose against Spurs because we still got 11 players on the pitch to play. So, but it's a tough one to call, and I think there's a lot of pressure on both sides here.
There you go. Arsenal fan predicts Spurs loss. The headlines write themselves. That's all we got time for. And look, we are literally split down the middle, 2-1 and 1-1. So we can't call it, but can you? Let us know your thoughts and your score predictions in the comments below. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.
Here we go.